Good morning, everyone. As you start jumping onto this live feed, we're going to be joined by Costa very shortly. He's currently been doing a virtual tour across the country, I know, earlier this morning. So we'll be having Costa come and jump on very shortly. But I hope you're enjoying a beautiful Sunday morning wherever you are. In Sydney, it's brightened up a bit after a couple of wet days. So you can see the sun starting to peek through in this part of the world, and hopefully the same's happening at your part of the world. So as you jump on, perhaps even put down through in the comments whereabouts you're dialing in from, because I know, as I mentioned, Costa's going to be taking you for a tour around his garden, I believe, so and looking at composting and other items like that. So you'll be able to check out all those various different items. But whilst we wait for him to come in, I thought I'd just have a chat to you in the interim rather than you just staring at me before we comment already. Good morning. He's only just finished the live feed. It was great. Yeah, so Terry's just jumped on there and given us a message about Costa. He's been, I think he was on for 2.5 hours. So he's been on a wonderful odyssey across the country. And we're going to have actually people from across the country today as well. So Sophie Thompson's going to be joining us from Gardening Australia after Costa's done through. And then we're going to have Peter Heaton talking about indoor plants later today as well. So lots of opportunities for people to jump on and learn a whole lot. So we've got some people putting through. We've got South Australia, we've got Queensland coming in. So I know people from all over the country find Queensland Garden Expo a great bit of respite, normally during what's the cooler months of the year through the other states. So it's great to see everyone getting involved virtually, if not in person. So I'll just keep my eye on my phone as well, just to make sure I haven't got any messages coming through here. Here we go. So he's getting connected. I've got a message through. One thing, it's an item that I've actually got to get into. So I'm obviously sitting in my veggie patch. Clear weather, good opportunity to get down looking for some of the snails and slugs that get their way into veggie patch through. But it's also during the cooler months and also when you've got a bit of time on your hands, perhaps through the rain, I was going to be getting through and actually tidying up some of my pruning equipment. So I was looking at my secateurs, and they're actually quite shocking. So you can see quite dirty. They're not as dirty as they possibly look in that screen there, but definitely in need of a clean. So I'm going to be getting one of those non-scouring Brillo pad, the non-scratch type ones that can go through and just take off a lot of that debris, because a lot of it's sap from things you might have been pruning. As well as a bit of surface corrosion. You might see a little bit of surface corrosion on there. So it makes a world of difference, be it in your veggie garden for ease. I mean, things like rocket and all that, you're not pruning through. But if you're going through and actually pruning, be it your roses or other plants in your garden, more woodier plants, a sharp pair of secateurs is important. Sharp and clean, though. So getting off all that surface debris will actually make it also a lot easier on your hand to be pruning it. So that's just something that you might want to get onto if perhaps the weather's not looking quite as lovely as it is here in Sydney at the moment. As you can see, more sunlight peeking its way through the trees here. So who else we've got? We've got some more Queensland, Logan Village, Queensland. So as I mentioned, jump in through there. Let us know where you're coming in from. It's always interesting to see with the show normally bringing in people from all the various states, seeing what the difference is online as well, because obviously we can go all over the world. Who can be the furthest person away? But so I think Costa's just making the way. I see him popping up into the patch. So I'm going to bring him in. Let me just pop a very good friend. Costa, you are live to Queensland.
Matt, how are you, everyone? I wasn't too bad. I wasn't too late. I've actually been on a edible garden odyssey. You might have seen, for anyone that was following my page, I was just doing a tour, a nationwide tour of edible gardens as part of the Urban Agriculture Forum survey on gardening, which is I mentioned on yesterday's broadcast. This is a really important document that all of us, each and every one of you, can sign to talk about how and what people are doing around growing food in 2020, to then be able to use it as leverage to get more support for community gardens, urban agriculture, growing in city and peri-urban areas, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I've just travelled 11,000 kilometres in
You're looking pretty
good
for it.
2 hours. Yeah.
Well, if you're ready to roll, I might throw it over to you, and you can take everyone on a garden ramp.
Through the... Yeah. Oh, morning. See my oh, look, the neighbours are all here this morning, walking the dogs, walking past the community verge. I'm just thinking I might take you off onto my normal phone data, because we might lose the... I just think we might lose... Is that sound okay there, Matt?
Is sound coming through? It's a bit jittery though in the visual.
Can you
so
hear me?
maybe go to phone data. I'll hang on here in case we have any issues.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're freeze framed on how I can see you. So
okay, so I'm moving. Is that all right?
Yeah, on my screen you look like you're static still, but audio is coming through fine. So I'm not sure if I'm seeing it the same way as everyone else is. Oh.
How's that?
Yep, you're moving again.
Is that okay?
Yep, you seem to be moving.
Oh, I am moving. Oh, maybe.
Yep.
So still, you couldn't tell.
You belong in Madame Two Swords. I'll throw over to you and let you go for a wander and jump back in through on the end. Have fun.
Yeah, no. Thank you. Hi everyone. It's great to be back and be a part of the Garden Expo's live broadcasts as an alternative to not being able to sit with you all live, which is a real shame. But hey, this is an opportunity, because normally if I were going to show you around my street garden, I'd have to show you slides. Whereas today I can take you around and show you the garden that is my street verge. Oh, there's my neighbour Roz. Hi, Roz. I'm just doing a live talk here. Yeah, I'm actually live. This is going out to people all around the country.
Oh no!
So this is my neighbour Roz. I've grown up with Roz. She just lives 2 doors down the street. And when we started my verge garden here, we did some verge gardening on Roz's nature strip as well, as part of the project. And yeah, I'll go down and show people. I'll get down there. So sort of live to all the people up in Queensland.
Oh, very nice.
Because the Queensland...
Well, I hope they're having good weather like us.
It's a beautiful day today, isn't it?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was your
cake? Oh, it's beautiful. That's what I saw you there. You gave me the most beautiful crumble, berry crumble. You brought down last night, and I thought I'll just have a quarter of it. Oh. I ended up eating half of it. Oh. It was so good.
That's perfect, Rosie.
Okay.
All right.
Continue.
See ya.
Bye.
That's what it's all about. Roz's. I grew up with her 2 sons, and she's lived down the street for as long as I have been breathing. And I was out and about yesterday, so I bought her a beautiful crumble and took it down last night, and she was just coming up to say thanks. But I'll show you her little verge garden as well in a minute. So this is my street garden. I'm going to swap cameras here and go round to the front mic, to the front camera, which I was to do yesterday, but look at this. I can do it now. So here you go. So this is the street garden. It is around about 38, 48. It's about 40. I think it's 24 and 12, 38 meters long, about 4 meters wide. And that's on the street side. So that's the street side there. And then on the footpath side, it's about 1.2, 1.5. 40. There's there's the going past. Good solid amount of growing space. Now on this side of the verge, I have my I suppose you'd call it my utilities area, where I have 2 worm farm bathtubs. I have 4 compost bins and 3 worm farms. There's about to be 2 more
Costa.
compost bins thrown in here.
It's Matt in here. You've gone sideways.
Yeah.
It's gone sideways.
Oh, have I?
Yeah.
Oh,
You might have.
how's
Yeah.
that?
That's better.
Let me. How's that? All right.
Yep. That's cool.
All right. Comments. Are we good there, Matt? Is the sound all right?
You're upright. Are you on phone
Okay.
data? Did you
no
switch
worries.
to phone data? It's just a bit jittery.
I'll take it off. Yeah, I think it just reverted to the house data, but it won't be able to see the modem too well. So how's that? Is that a better platform?
That seems to be That seems to be
Is
cleaner.
that fairly stable?
Yeah, that's more stable.
Let me know what you think of that situation, Matt.
Oh, good.
But I think, is that all good? Okay, no worries. So yeah, this the beauty of this space is, imagine if I point like that, that's north. And with that being north, this is on the south side of a fence. So it's perfect for my worm farms because they're not worm farms and compost because they're not exposed to any hot sun. I basically intend up beyond this aloe, I'll squeeze in another 2 compost bins in here and another one in there. And that way the whole space will be my share waste center. And it's going gangbusters. I'm getting a lot of food delivered on a regular basis, which is really fantastic from the streets point of view. Basically, people. So if you're thinking of doing composting, provide containers. So I have this container, and you can see that people can bring their bags up and put them in here. And then I also have this bin where I get delivered much bigger waste loads from some locals who are making food for their personal training clients. So all of that ends up in these worm farms and compost bins. If I get too much, what I then do is actually dig it directly into the verge garden and bury it into the ground, which creates additional food for this sandy soil. Now, at the moment in winter, because of the trees that exist over there, this area is somewhat shaded, but I have a couple of windows where the sun gets through, and so I've planted out a variety of kales, womboks, and leafy greens, silver beets and beetroots in here. I've been putting these pots over the top of them at night because there's a bit of development work going on in my neighbourhood at the moment, and as a result, there's been a bit of a surge in the local vermin, and they go for the seedlings, which is a real nuisance. Over the winter period, over the autumn and COVID period, I've been dining on things like this mallow weed, which is very tasty steamed, but most importantly, I've been getting massive mileage out of my amaranth. Now, this amaranth forest that you see here, this actually is self-seeded, and I have had a bowl of this 2 to 3 times a week, and it's as simple as taking off the leaves. So they're pretty much finished now, because as you can see, they've gone to head. So all the energy is going into these seed heads, and I don't think they're not quite ready yet. There's not you can't that you. I'm trying to see if you can see. Yeah, you can see the little black. You can see the little black seeds there on my hand. So they'll just drop down and reseed the forest for next year. But simply peeling these leaves off like such, and steaming them. Look at that. There's a little snail. That my chickens will love that. So we've had a bit of rain. I came out last night during the rain and collected a whole lot of snails to feed to the chickens, which was fantastic. But basically, these amaranth, think about them as a really easy edible crop. Now, I put compost out onto the verge about the end of March, early April, and as a consequence, look at this. I've still got tomatoes. Actually, I can show you up here. I still have tomatoes bearing. If I go around here, there was a heap of them in here, which most people wouldn't believe at this time in July in Sydney. Oh, there they are. Look, I'll just get in here. Look at those. And here, tomatoes everywhere. And that was just from the compost. But the other thing that was really interesting with the verge garden, and if you're thinking about plants, like I've run lemongrass. You can see lemongrass running the whole edge here. So when people open their car doors, they hit lemongrass, which smells really nice. And then there's just all sorts of volunteers. This was my parsley, which is growing gangbusters. And you can see the red vein sorrel. I've got more. There's a variety of different lettuces. All of this just grew out of the seed bank that's here, and I could still get quite a bit out of the amaranth, for that matter, which is pretty good. I also dined on the farmer's friend, which most people wouldn't think about as an edible, but I kept it because you see the yellow flowers. So this is just part of the seed bank that's here, but all I do is just take the heads off, so my bees really benefit from. And you can see that there's bees in here. There's bees. There's plenty of bees fossicking around here at the moment. So when they're done, I just pull these heads off, and what that does is actually make these leaves get much bigger. And together with the amaranth and the mallow, I've had some fantastic meals out of it. I left a couple of rows of that in there like that, in between my veggies, as a nice little buffer from wind, and as a pocket to hold the heat in. And it's been working well. These veggies have only been in 2 weeks, 2.5 maybe, probably 3 weeks, and they're going pretty well indeed. So the other thing that I wanted to mention here was that the lemongrass I just allow to go to seed, and I harvest and then replant lemongrass. This right here in the verge, there's a crop that I can pick up and take and fill the gaps. So I'm going to fill these gaps all the way along the edge here. Now, this overgrown section, you might think, oh, that's all cooch. I'm going to dig that out shortly, and these offcuts of my willow, which I use to build the fence that I'm going to show you up the top, I'm going to bury that into the sandy soil, and that will become a wonderful fungal and microbe feeding station. So all of this timber will go into the ground in what we call Hugelkultur, which if you want to learn more about, I can put it in the link, Hugelkultur. And that's basically a way of burying your carbon into the soil. And in these sandy soils, it's really good because it creates that glean to prevent all the nutrients from just being leached down into the sandy soil. My worm farm here, just seeing if there's any, my worm farm here is absolutely steaming along. I only need to peel back, have a look. When I peel this back a little, it's loaded like you wouldn't believe with worms. If I just only need to turn over any area and it's screaming with worms. It's one of my most productive worm farms, and I gather worms from here and share them into my other. And you can see, if you have a closer look, oops, there's all those little white babies. This one is multiplying like nothing else. So there's going to be a massive number of worms come online over the next 2 months. When you see all those little white squiggles are babies. Oh, I love digging around in this one. This one is just an absolute feast. I'm just trying to see. Yeah, look at that. It's heaving with life, this farm. And then the compost bins, as they're finished, I just get them out. I get them out onto the garden. So this one is going along really well. It's probably about a month away from ready. I've loaded up all of these worm farms last week, so they're kind of well and truly feeding away and breaking down all of that food. I'm getting about 150 kilos of food scraps a week. And if anyone has any questions they want to ask about worm farms and composting, please feel free to drop your question into the feed. Someone's dropped some scraps in here, and the thing that'll happen if the scraps just sit on the top, it will attract vinegar flies. I consistently put paper over the top, and that prevents it. So that's just someone put it straight in there instead of in, because normally I say put it into the bins at the top, and that way I don't end up with the vinegar flies infesting the bin. See here, this one's going along fine. It needs a bit of a turn. You can see that last installation of food about 7 days ago. It needs a little bit of a turn, and I'll put some brown material, some carbon in there, and that'll bring that bed back to speed in no time. One of the important things that you want to do if you're doing a compost bin is definitely wrap some Avery mesh around the base, and that'll prevent any vermin from digging around in there. And like I said, because of all the development that's been going on up on the next corner, 2 doors along, it just means that you get a lot more activity, and that activity makes it activates and mobilizes the local vermin, the local rats. So there's been a few getting around, so I make sure that all of my bins are protected. This is a very valuable resource that I would recommend people use in the gardens. I mentioned it at the community garden yesterday. arborists wood chip when they've been chopping down trees. I use it on the paths. So in this case, along the edge of the verge, I use it so that people can walk along here when they get out of their cars. And what you'll find is when you dig in here, actually, you know what? I just topped this up, and so this is actually fresh mulch. I'll take you down the street here because this is where you see the real value of using wood chip like this in your garden, because as it breaks down, it gives you, oh yes, here we go. This, what you see here is all sorts of hyphae and fungi that are breaking down the wood chip. And as they break it down, they build a network that benefits all the plants nearby, because they're not only securing moisture but also nutrients. And as this breaks down, it then turns the soil of what was pretty much a sandy soil, sandy light grey soil. If I dig around in here, I should have bought a shovel. When I dig around in here a little bit, you can see just how much doing this over a few years. Look at that, from sand to this beautiful, rich organic matter. And each year, by topping up this wood chip, it breaks down and provides a whole lot of other mineral highways to feed the plants. It's something that I've just get more and more out of with each year that passes, and I realise the value of having these different forms of breakdown going on. And I can pick this up through my local council. There's a pile that they provide for the local land carers, and I can go there and pick this up and spread it out on the garden. Millipedes bad for your compost or worm farms? I have bad issues with them at the moment. Generally, the millipedes will come in if it's a bit too dry, Terry. That's what I find. When the compost is nice and moist, it's generally not a home for millipedes. They don't like it. It's only when it dries out that you'll start to get cockroaches and ants, because it becomes a warm home for them. Now up here, I actually, as part of a project for the show, I'd love to start a worm farm. What is a good resource to help me start? Okay, Leanne, it's good to see the questions coming in. You know what I might do? I'll just walk you through this, and then I'm going to go and plug my phone in, because it seems to be dragging the battery down pretty quickly. So what I'll do, I'll hold these questions, and then we'll get to the back end, and I'll sit and run through them all, and I can talk to you about it. So what I want to show you here is this project that I've done with the show. And I have a native agonis, a native willow, and I pruned the willow and used the prunings to create this woven fence. And then I've planted paper daisies, 2 different types. So these went in a couple of months ago, and are going to come up a treat in about a month or so. So there's 2 different varieties. You can see the different shape on the plants. They're going to come up a treat. I've got a little bit of weed growth, which is perfect food for my chickens, and then I have the pea mulch has actually sprouted some peas, and all I'm going to do is break that off just below the ground level and leave the roots in there as food for the soil microbes. There's also here, I've put in a whole lot of, so basically what I wanted out of this garden bed is for this to be a continuation of this bed, which is my native habitat. And it has a wonderful array of coastal rosemary, Banksia serrata, Banksia spinulosa. These spinulosas look magnificent and have gone so well this year. They are a beautiful plant. I've got the Thryptomene saxicola, which is another favourite of mine. Butterflies love these. They absolutely love these plants. So I've put a few of those in and a few more into this bed. And I want to continue this native corridor into what this is across the front of the house, which will be a butterfly and pollinator garden. So I've got everything from grasses to native mint to native peas, which also are wonderful food for the native pollinators. I've got saltbush, more thryptomenes. There's a huge range of plants here, which this will feature on Gardening Australia, but not until sometime in the future. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a little sneak preview of this. All I have to do at the moment is just duck in and nip out some of these, the tops of these weeds. The chickens would love those. Actually, that's more than edible for me too. I'll have to fight the chickens for it. I've also gone with this Hardenbergia, and this Hardenbergia ground cover is just going to spread its way across the ground. That's a low prostrate form. And then I have this one, which is going to grow up. Look at the beautiful pink purple flowers on that. And I'm going to, that'll grow up over this acacia. So we'll have some beautiful yellow flowers of that acacia, and a variety of other local natives that are coming into flower as well. Look at the wonderful bellflower there. So I wanted to just share that little project with you. What I might do now is go and let me just have a quick look at the chat. Not sure if there's any other comments, Maddie. What I'll do is I'll go in. There's one other thing that I wanted to show you. Hang on a second. I'll just come through here, given that we're talking compost. Oops, there's a few bees around. Okay, so this is a compost bin. This is an old compost bin that I've had for a while, and all I've done, I just wanted to show you. Here's how I've just used this Avery mesh and cut a circular piece with about a 30 to 50 millimeter overlap, and then I crimp it around the bottom, and you end up with that nice secure base. So then I can flip that over, and there's no way that anything can get in there. It's really simple way to secure your compost and not end up with any vermin. This is where I'm growing my garlic this year. I found out on the street in Maroubra, I was driving along one day and I came across one of the pods just thrown out in the council cleanup, and I thought, you got to be kidding. Fortunately, I was in my friend's ute and we just went right through it in, and then I went and bought the canopy that goes over the top, and that way I can protect it, because I actually planted out this entire area you see here last year with 100 garlic bulbs from the Farmer Incubator Project, and the sulphur-crested cockatoos took it upon themselves to rip every last one of them out. So I needed to come up with a solution, and I was gifted a veggie pod, which is just hilarious. And this one, we actually checked on it. It was 7 years old, and there was nothing wrong with it. All I did was change these clips and put a top on it, and I'm growing my garlic in there for safekeeping. My chookies are here. I've actually been crushing up some oyster shells to feed them, to keep their shell grit up, to give them some shell grit, because they're back on the lay and they've been so busy laying that I know that they need a little bit of additional shell grit. One of the girls there, so you've got Awesome and Flighty. This is Flighty here, and Awesome has just walked around there. She laid a 90-gram egg and has been averaging around about the 80 to 90-gram eggs since they came back online about 2 weeks ago. It's a beautiful day here in Sydney, and as you can see, my bees are very active. They're enjoying the sun and the warmth, and judging by what I can see over there, their feet are loaded up with plenty of pollen. I'll just go in closer. They're very busy bees. So yeah, I think I might, at this point, I'll just duck upstairs and put my phone into a crate. See, these are volunteer brassicas. This is like rapa, which is canola. It was an Italian version of it. And even here we are in July, and the bees are loving it. And this is all just self-sown. So the chickens trim the lower parts of it, and the bees dine on the top parts. It's the same as I said with the farmer's friend. As long as I take the seed heads off, look, we've got a hoverfly in there, just keeping an eye and hopping into some of the flowering as well. So these kind of things are really valuable to leave around. You can see here in some of my pots where it's self-sown, and I've just left it there, particularly at this time of the year, because we need flowers, and look how much activity is going on. 2 hoverflies, 3 bees, and a couple of native bees that I saw that are a little bit hard to pick up on the broadcast. So what I might do is I'll just head upstairs and grab the charger. I didn't think the phone would run out so quickly, but for some reason these broadcasts certainly chew through the hold with me, peeps. I won't be a sec. Yeah, these broadcasts certainly. I'm just taking my boots off because they're covered in mud, or at least wet sand here in Bondi. Here we go. Okay. Now, let me plug. I'll just plug the phone in so we don't get lost, and I'm just going to change the camera around to front camera, and then I can sit you there. Oh, where can I sit you? Yeah, that looks good. All right, I'll just give my hands a quick wash. Still got a whole lot of wormy goodness on there. Oops. Don't worry about that. I'll just bring you back. Okay, so now someone mentioned earlier, Matt. I'll just have a look at those comments. Live comments. Here we go. Love the willow edging. Hi, Costa. Is there any tips on how to... All right, now let me go back to Nicola Jones. Hello, Nicola. Picture's freezing. Gold Coast Queen is a great tour. Thanks. You're busy. It's a busy welcome. Hello, Shell. I'm just trying. Good morning. Yes, yeah, I just finished. All right, where's the crowd? Oh, that's good. I was about to ask. Yeah, so Terry, one of the key things, and it's the same. It's the same with your bench top kind of tidies. To avoid the vinegar flies, just layer a piece of paper over the top. Don't leave the scraps uncovered, because the sugars will attract the vinegar flies. And then the other thing, when you do empty it, give it a clean out and check for the little eggs that are laid on the top if you've let them become part of the cycle, and wash it out with some hot water, scrub it down, and you'll get rid of them like that. So don't be afraid to layer. Look, I layer paper, newspaper, serviettes, things like that. Put your carbon in there as you put your greens in, and that way you've already got a balance along the way, rather than it being just one big green glug. Now, I have a second bin, which is my turnover bin, and my turnover bin is one that I put things in that I know the chickens will eat, and I can drop that down to them each morning. And it's just a simple way of being able to direct your scraps to where they want to be, so that the chickens get a go at the stuff that they like, and the compost gets what it needs. Well, the compost gets all the leftovers, so I go chickens first, then compost. No, chickens, then worms, then compost. Now, any millipedes? Now, we mentioned that. I'd love to start a worm farm. That's right. Leanne Harvey, you mentioned it's definitely worth having a worm farm. Terry Mitchell, 100%. Like, it's just a must. And I've just recorded a story on how you can make one out of polystyrene boxes if you want to start at that level and then move up from there. And then there's ways that you can go. You can buy proprietary ones, which are awesome. You can use a bathtub, which is great if you've got the scraps, or you can use buckets too. A wonderful system that I saw. I don't know if any of you saw my story on Gardening Australia about 2 months ago on the couple out at Altona. And their whole garden is in those white pails, and their composting system is in that too. So if you can get hold of those white pails with lids, you can compost even on a balcony or in a small courtyard. It's a really valuable way to go about composting in small areas. Okay, now who was it? Terry. Was it Terry? No, Leanne. I'd love to start a worm farm. What's a good resource to help me start? Yeah, what I'll do, Leanne, is I'll put a link to those stories for you on this story once I finish later today, and you can watch the story on the worm farms. You can in the buckets, which is a really easy way to do it. Of course, there's my story on the worm farm bathtub, and then there's a polystyrene box one that I'm doing, and then there's also some other worm farm stories on Gardening Australia that I can put some links to for you as well. But don't hesitate to get started. Again, it's about the mix. You don't want to overfeed your worms. You want to have a nice bedding. Lots of shredded paper is an easy resource that you can pick up every week by picking up newspapers out of the blue bins or whatever your colour your bin is on recycle, shredding paper and using that as a bedding along with some compost, and then away you go. You can feed your worms, don't overfeed them, and then watch them. Get to know what's too much and what's too little, and build an observation chain. Is there any tip on how to help a stock plant to flower? It's 2 years old now and over 1 meter tall. Oh, look, probably, one of the simplest, well, not simplest, one way to help things flower is by applying some sulfate of potash. And basically potash is nature's signal after a fire that it says, okay, here you go. Here's some ash. We've had a burn. We've had a fire. It was Armageddon. We need to propagate and keep the family going. So I'd put some potash, a couple of handfuls of potash around it. You can put some out now, and then some more out in 6 weeks around spring, and let me know how you go. 2 comments and a question. Love the weave fence. Did one a few years ago with stone fruit, apple prune. Yeah, that's a thing, Jacob Freeman. That weaved fence that otherwise would have gone to get mulched, and I'm actually going to run it all along my service area where all the compost bins are. I'm going to run a little fence along there with that willow, and I'll show you. This is the willow. I'll show you out the window. I'll just turn it around, and you can see out of the back camera. There's the willow. I pruned it down to those stumps, but it's still the back half because there's 2 trees here. I'm yet to prune that, and when I prune that, I'm going to use it and do that whole length along the street, and it'll come up a tree. When I do that, I'll do a live so that people can see how that progresses. Let me see. I'll just go back on here, Jacob Freeman. What did you say? Can you harvest the amaranth seed for a great gluten-free game? Yes, you can. You certainly can. It's like a smaller version of quinoa, I suppose. Tiny little black seeds. Are worms the same variety? Yeah, pretty much, Jacob. They're all the like I just got those. They came when I did a worm farm story, and someone had worms. Like they're a mixture of red wrigglers, predominantly red wrigglers and blues. Compost Revolution. If your council's involved, gives discounted farms. Get a worm farm cafe from Waverley, and came with detail. Yeah, Jacob, that's exactly it. Check your council and see whether they do a Compost Revolution, and you can also follow links to Share Waste, and you can, if you're not composting at the moment, you can find someone in your area and share your compost with them, which is even better because then you're participating even if you're not composting at the moment. I made my worm farms out of 2 recycled buckets, old irrigation piping, and recycled furniture. Exactly, Terry. There's so many ways that you can make it. Sue Maguire, yes. Basically, the ash out of your fire is a similar material. Like that's basically the ash. Like when I went up into the Blue Mountains, to the Blue Mountains Botanic Gardens after the fires, and you can see where the ash is on the ground and the seeds, the seed bank is bursting forth, particularly in those areas where it's getting that extra injection of potash. It's basically nature's signal and nature's service. The ashes on the ground, the seedlings benefit from it and grow. Wonderful to see in action that process. But yes, you can use that, and you can sprinkle that through into your compost bins as well. Wet it down and put it in there and stir it in. That's a good use for it. Hi Costa, I'm from Brisbane. I've got loads of cockroaches in my compost bin. Again, cockroaches will be there when it's warm. I find any worm farm, when I open the lid and cockroaches run out, I'll be guaranteed. And I looked at one at the community garden yesterday, one of those aero bins, because they have the aerator in the center, it means the air gets through, so they dry out quicker. And when they dry out quicker, you can be guaranteed there will be cockroaches in there. So the quickest way to deal with those, Deanne, is give your compost bin a good soaking and then a good turning. The more disturbance and the more it maintains its moisture, they are 2 details that the cockroaches won't appreciate in the slightest. Deb Shelley asked, are bees hard to keep? Deb, the joy of bees is the learning. It's a project. It's not a. It's a it's a lifelong hobby. It's not just a one-off idea. The joy of beekeeping, I think, you know, if you're thinking of starting, my first port of call would be to join your local bee club and find someone locally who's keeping bees near you and ask them if you can come along and start to observe them when they're doing some work, come and get to know the processes that are involved so people can see, and I'm just trying to see why this isn't, I just want, for some reason that charger isn't wanting to charge, and I don't want to drop out for the last little while, so I'll just put on a new charger. I think we're good now. Yeah, so my advice to you, who was that? Deb. Yeah, my advice, Deb, would be definitely join your local bee club, and then that way you can meet someone, start to get a handle on what's involved, see what the timings are seasonally, how much you need to do, the steps you need to take. And if you start with someone and build up that relationship, you can help them come round like that. And that's what happened with me. I had a local lady who had a problem with a neighbour and had to get rid of her bees. And so I said, well, bring them to my place and keep them here and do your beekeeping. And then I participated in the steps with her, and then she found a swarm, and we put that in a box, and then that became mine. And now I'm signing up to these steps, you know, and I'm learning. Yes, do I call myself a beekeeper? Yes, I'm a beekeeper, but I'm a beekeeper in training because I haven't been doing it for long. It's only, I've had native bees for many years, but I haven't had European honeybees. Really, the beekeepers had them here for probably 18 months, 2 years maybe. And I've had my hive, my wild swarm, and we keep together. And that's been, you know, probably about 12 months. And yeah, I've got a lot to learn. But it's great, you know, and I see what goes on, and I'm learning, and I'm able to use my honey and share it with people, and share it where I go, and give it as gifts and help raise awareness. So yeah, it's a wonderful process, and I would highly recommend it. Nicola, about the Verge Garden, yes, I did, and basically I had to just submit a form and say this is what I want to do, and my reason for that was to make sure that it was on the books, so that it could then be used as leverage to illustrate that my council is up for it, they do it, this is all green light, and then it gave precedent for other people to use that precedent and leverage their council as well. So it's really important that we do these things and make sure that we bring them into that public light, so that you know, like the City of Bayswater in Perth has done wonderful things that's helped back here on the East Coast, just as in the live broadcast I did earlier today on the Edible Garden Odyssey. You know, the Lynham Commons is a great example of where someone looked at an unkept piece of just weedy grass on the side of a park in Lynham in Canberra, and said, well, why don't we turn it into a forest of edible trees, so that it's not a perennial garden that requires all this ongoing annual weekly work. This is a forest which is going to grow over a period of time. It needs injections of work, but is less maintenance and less cost than just running a mower over it every month. So you know, the Lynham Commons is now an example that we can all use and leverage and say, hey, it's being done. So if someone in the council turned to you and said, no, you can't do it, you go, well, here, have a look at this. Not as a you know, it's like, no, here it is. Ring these people up, speak to the council in the ACT. They're now got a fantastic verge garden policy that they're being really proactive about. So it's exciting. Don't underestimate how powerful all of our individual actions are. And, you know, my little piece, your little piece, City of Bayswater, Lyneham, you know, we're driving this change. Also, how does council permission work for public compost? There is one at Transition Bondi. I would like to start one at Western Sydney Uni, Richmond campus, where I'm studying agriculture, and there's already a few worm farms. Yeah, look, Jacob, you just got to get out there relative to your context and make sure you maintain it and keep it clean and that it's not anaerobic and smelling, so that you get that immediate association that this is pesky and festering and so on. You know, my worm farms don't smell. My compost doesn't smell. People walk up and down the street, they're not offended, so they have no reason to get upset. And it comes down to the maintenance. And make sure, Jacob, that, you know, you keep an eye on it and you bring people in to be a part of it. And the more people that are part of it and contributing to it, then the more they'll be maintaining it and checking it and turning it and using it, ultimately using it, which is what we want. If you got any other questions, Jacob, or anyone, just follow up. You can direct message or drop any more questions here. How often should the garden be fertilized with worm juice? Terry, worm juice you can use quite regularly, because it's not just about fertilizer, it's a soil inoculant as well. This is not just like dumping more and more and more nitrogen. It's actually a tonic for the soil. And when the soil is in good condition and the microbes are in balance, then they provide the minerals that are locked up down there. And that's half the problem, where we're changing, we're shifting our approach to inputs and saying, well, let's pull back on the inputs and work on what's already in there to make it available through the fungal and microbial activity. And then the microbes and the fungi provide the minerals and the nutrients for the plants at root level. So adding worm juice, and the other key thing with worm juice is it's not about volume. If you're getting a lot of worm juice out of your worm farms, it's because you probably got too much nitrogen compared to carbon ratio. What you want is just a small amount of leachate, which is the rawest and purest of value out of the worms. If you're getting a lot of liquid, that means that there's too much broken down leachate, like liquid from the breaking down food, which is not as beneficial. That is not a stable form of food for your garden. What you want is the really rich, small amount. So make sure you get more carbon into your worm farm. You don't want that dripping like a tap. It's not about volume with that stuff. It's about quality. And there's a lot of work being done in that space, and the thinking is changing. And I'm doing a lot of reading and research on it, and the science is coming in saying, yeah, it's not just about saying, wow, I'm getting lots and lots of this. You want your worm farm to be moist for the worms, but you don't want it wet because your food is not, you've got too much food glugging and breaking down. So just think about it in those terms, Terry. So yeah, that's that. If you've got any more questions about your worm farms and your compost, feel free to drop them into the stream here. I think as gardeners, and all of you that come to the Garden Expo, and all of you that are gardening already, I think what you realise more and more as time goes on is that the more we grow the soil, the more the plants will grow. Rather than worrying about feeding the plants, we need to nurture the soil. And as we do that, and so many of our stories on Gardening Australia continue to double down on that. Tino's constantly talking about soil. Jerry is constantly building his soil. Sophie's building her soil in the conditions that she has out in the hills of South Australia. Millie
is currently not just rebuilding, but she's renovating her house, but she's rebuilding she's maintaining her soil, but then rebuilding it after the renovations. The more work we do on the soil, the more positive the results will be across the long term. It's not just about feed. It's about grow and nurture. And when we get that soil, when we get that soil environment right, we'll really see the benefits in our plants, and not the ebb and flow. Like, oh, and then you get too much nitrogen. The consequence of that is that builds a lot of sugars, and with a lot of sugars, that promotes more attack from insects because they come after the sugars. Whereas a more stable soil environment will give you the minerals and nutrients in a tempered pace, which won't be nitrogen dominated, and then you won't get the same insect problems. So they're all connected, and this is that area that I love to learn more about, and you start to realize that yeah, our journey as gardeners, as I'm sure all of you are already playing with, our journey is about the soil, and then what happens above the soil. Then we go into the next world, which is the plants we choose, what plants need different conditions, and how we get the plants and the mix right to provide for the pollinators, and then the pollinators provide the insects, which help to feed the birds, which provide this entire mix. But I'm going into other ground here. Yes, you're right. My worm farm produces about 200 to 300 mils per week. The colour is about the colour of a dried mung bean pod, depending on the farm. These are, yeah, the colour of a dried mung bean pod. Terry Mitchell, you are just out there on a Sunday, mate. I am loving that. A dried mung bean pod. I'm going to double down on that, and I can see the next Taubmans or Dulux or whoever, they're gonna have the Terry Mitchell range of colours and dried mung bean pod. People, just like when antique white USA was all the rage, I can see, the 2020s. The 2020s is going to be the period of the dried mung bean pod. People come for dinner. They go, wow, I love the look of the place. You've repainted, yeah, dried mung bean pod. Or half strength dried mung bean pod, or double strength dried mung bean pod. This is a whole new paint currency, mate. I love it. Costa, I'm starting a garden from scratch, just lawn here at the moment. It's better to bring in soil and create mounds, or just start digging and composting. What you can do is you can start to, I mean, let me see. It's just lawn. It'd be great to see what condition the lawn is, but you can build straight over the top of the lawn. You can actually dig the paths. If you wanted, when you set out your garden beds, you could dig the paths over onto the garden area, and then run wood chip paths, and that will then give you your raised ground, and then cardboard layer, do some no dig on the top of that, and that will suppress the weeds and the grass early on. And then once you've done that, you can start to plant. You might even start with a green manure crop just to get that in and growing, and the roots breaking down into the ground, and then drop that mulch or straw mulch, and then do your first lot of planting. So again, doing a no dig will give that garden soil or that grass area a chance to rebuild its microbial activity, because under lawn there's only a certain amount of activity that's taking place, and you can start to build the organic layer and then do your planting come spring or summer. But feel free to ask any more questions about it, and post a couple of pictures so I can look at it either here on this post, or if time goes on and you want to direct message me, feel free. But if you keep it going on this stream, and then when we get to a point we can bring it over, but that'll keep people coming backwards and forwards to the Queensland Garden Expo page. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's any other questions that anyone has. Thanks for the chance to take you on a little bit of a tour and also answer some questions. Irene Morris, that's a pleasure. Terry, Nicola, good soil is the key for sure, and getting that magic balance. Yeah, and Nicola, it's about this consistency. You know, one of the interesting things at the moment is, you know, so many people have come to gardening, and you can't expect to just, you can have some initial success, you know, when you create a container garden and you plant some seedlings. But if you want to go that next stage, there's so many layers, and, you know, you only need to ask Matt. He's seen enough gardens and has seen enough gardeners to know that the people that get success are the ones that, you know, set up those peripheral systems with composting, with worm farming, with breaking down the leaves, keeping the resources that they have, acquiring resources through neighbours in the community to then build that soil. And then with that soil success comes the health and immunity to grow plants at the next level. And for me, I'm going to be improving all the time. You know, there's so much to learn. Terry, I'll have a great day. Deb, thanks so much for sharing all this. My garden helps my mental health issues. I wouldn't have been able to cope. One of the things that came out of the COVID survey, which we're still doing, it's up to 7,500 signatures. So please jump over there and share it with your friends who have been gardening and anyone else that's taken it on. But one of the interesting things about COVID is there's going to be a real impact on 18 to 24-year-olds, just their outlook and their future, just because of the serious fog around the future for them at the moment. So being able to attract them to the therapeutic side of gardening is something that we as existing gardeners can do in little simple ways, by giving a desktop plant, by giving a pot plant, by giving an indoor plant, by giving someone a pot with some shallots or some edibles in it and saying, hey, you know, put these in your omelette or put these in your cooking. And if ever there was a time when us gardeners and everything about the Queensland Garden Expo and all of the stall holders and all of the presenters and all of the visitors, if ever there was a time when we're needed to support our young people and get them into the real healing and therapeutic aspect of gardening, now's the time. Now is the time.
We've got Sophie coming up next at 1 o'clock. Costa, she's going to be touching on those points as well, which is always good. And you mentioned indoor plants. Peter Heaton's coming on a little bit later as well. So TLC for your indoor plants. So people will be covering off a couple of those topics. So that'll be good. And we got through with the battery. He got there with the charge. He didn't run out of fuel.
Yeah. It's interesting when you get out in the field. Maybe I don't know whether the battery's starting to get a bit old in this, but once you go live, I started at, I think I had 70%. I thought that'll be fine, and within 10, 15 minutes, it was down to 21, and I was like, oh, I didn't want to die mid broadcast. Otherwise, they just have to send someone down and put me in the compost bin and leave me there. But no, I got the cord connected, and I mean, ideally, my battery pack was flat. I should have been a little more organised, and then I could have just had that in my back pocket. But it was nice to be able to sit and answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly. Got a good wander through. So we might wrap it up through there. So everyone smash the hearts or post a message through there. It's been great to wander around your garden. And as I mentioned, for those that are watching live streams throughout today, or if you might be looking at re-watching them later on, we've also got Sophie Thompson coming on. And also,
yay, Soph.
Fun afternoon, lovely leisurely Sunday. And nicer weather today for us in Sydney too. Hey, Costa.
It is. Matt, thanks for all the hosting you've been doing, mate. It's fantastic, and it's so good to see people able to jump on and be a part of it. Sophie's coming up. That's fantastic. Pete is a wealth of knowledge. Phil Dudman was on. Jerry was on. You've been on. Turmeric. Kevin Red's been. Arno King. So if you haven't seen these ones we're talking about, just jump on the website and go and look at it. There's so much valuable info out of all these speakers. It's as good as being at the Expo, except we're just not there to sort of have a chat to afterwards. But you can online. So yes, it's all the same, except we're not there enjoying Nambour. But next year we'll be back.
Next year, definitely. Okay, well, thanks for that, Costa. We'll
Pleasure,
see you
man.
a little bit later, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.